What the city is talking about. This is Montreal Now on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
That is James MENNIE. He is over at the Montreal Gazette. So, Jim, I'm not sure where you want to start. Perhaps we'll start by getting you on the phone. I think that line just went dead. Jim, are you there?
I can hear you.
There you go. I hear you now. Sure.
Okay, welcome back.
Yeah, thank you.
That may have got dropped in the shuffle. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, and I want to thank David Hertel, by the way, for sitting in for the first couple of days this week. So let me go with this first of all, and I'm going to go back, and I know you've probably already covered this because it happened, I think, on Monday, right? This PSPP video ad to Anglos, of course, to vote for Sovereign. But anyway, that aside, what Francois Legault would do? What's this bad cop routine that you're talking about?
Oh, no, the thing is, right, I mean, and I mentioned this to you before you went on gallivanting for a few days, is that Francois Legault has really, he's got to turn the ship around. There's a lot at stake here, and he has really got to change his political fortunes because it's only a matter of time until the rumblings of mutiny become roars of mutiny behind him with that 89-member caucus who are clearly going to be looking for work come the next general election. That said, he's got to start building bridges. So what do you do? Well, he was addressing the Quebec Union of Municipalities thing, and that's a tough room for him because you remember the last time that Francois Legault decided to speak sort of en masse to Quebec's mayors, it was by accusing them of being a bunch of freeloaders. He says, it's always easy for mayors to come begging to Quebec for money. And at that point, they were begging to Quebec for money to keep their public transit systems going because they needed them for people to get around and go to work and pay taxes and so on and so forth. But, this is the thing. Francois Legault has got this very, very bad habit. It's bad in any line of work, but it's especially bad in politics, is he always has that extra. He should shut his mouth before saying this line. He doesn't, so he decides, this whole thing about, it's easier for mayors to come begging. Anyway, he had to go into the room today. He had to address them. And he says, we have our little differences. We have our little ups and downs. But the fact of the matter is, it's a time of peace now. I still have the money to give you. I can't give you one red cent for any of your needs. But I just want you to understand, the time of nattering at each other is true, which is very well for you to say, Mr. Legault. Because don't kid yourself. Your audience also smells the blood that is swirling around you in the water with these poll results. And the fact of the matter is, even though it can be very frustrating for a political party at the provincial level to deal with all these nattering little mayors, the fact is these mayors are the front line of Quebec. These mayors are the eyes and ears of Quebec. And whether it's Valérie Plante and, in Montreal and you can have problems with her, but the fact is she is really your voice for Quebec City. And the same whether you're living in a small town. I mean, this is it. This is your lifeline and your mayor is your front line representation. And for Francois Legault to give that the back of his hand, I think somebody may have pulled him aside. I really don't think he came to this conclusion on his own, Aaron. I think somebody pulled him aside and said, listen, boss, you better smarten up because our numbers are not going to go anywhere until you change your attitude. So maybe he's trying to start with mayors. He may move on to opposition parties and so on and so forth. But clearly, the poisonous, toxic, petty, partisan tone that has been the signature of Francois Legault and his brand of politics doesn't work. He's got the poll results to prove it. And maybe we might be seeing maybe too little too late, but we might be seeing an attempt to turn that particular ship around.
You have to wonder, and I realize it's been a couple of weeks or a week since we had our most recent poll provincially?
Yeah.
So,
listen, they're the problem is, and a lot of the pom-pom shakers for the CAQ over at Québécois are saying, it looks as if they've stopped the descent now. They've evened out at 22%, which is still 10 points behind the PQ. But here's the real problem: is that those numbers can be perceived as being the norm, as being what the CAQ is. Don't waste your time with the CAQ. They're only at 22%. They talk a good game, but nothing seems to be working out for them these days, even though they are in government. But this is the real thing. And you and I would sort of bewail the fact, my God, we have almost another 2 years with these guys before the next election. Don't kid yourself. They're looking at that calendar as well, and they're going, my God, how do we get through this without self-immolating, because they have got a lot of ill will stacked up against them, and as far as I'm concerned, very justifiably so. And they're not really big on ideas on how to solve things. A lot of their so-called promises for a lot of things, whether it's les maisons des aînés, the seniors' residences, indeed the daycares. We saw a devastating report today from the Auditor General,
right.
Quebec Auditor General, on the state of our daycare system. And you can look at some of the big points on there. Is like you're supposed to have a 2 to 3 ratio for educators, daycare workers, and kids. Because they're little ones and they need to have more attention perhaps than the older ones. They're lucky in most cases to have a 1 to 2 ratio. And there's in terms of an assessment of all the services they provide, they're not. I think they have a failure rate of about 41% that are not exactly meeting the government's criteria for the services they should be providing for the little ones who are there. But what really struck me, and this is deep down in the La Presse coverage of the Auditor General's report, it seems that certain problems, certain violations of the health and security for the kids that are being observed in inspections, well, you can't tell if there's any follow-up, or if the follow-up involves more than a phone call, or if indeed the problem is super serious or not serious. There is no real oversight as to what is going on in terms of those kids' health and safety, which kind of made my blood run cold, far more than ratios, far more than staff shortages, but this is it. Governments, and especially this government, they try to turn daycares into a signature cause, and pragmatically, you can't blame them or any other government. Daycares, yes, it's good for the little ones, but it also allows each family in Quebec to go from one potential taxpayer to 2 taxpayers. So that's an investment in everybody's future. But here we see that there's a lot of talk and a lot of announcements, and oh my goodness, we really want to shoot for these numbers here. We really want to get this. Apparently, as I speak to you, we're still 22,000 spots short. We have 22,000 kids on the waiting list. But when you see these reports come out that suggest there is absolutely no oversight whatsoever, that the system that is serving, and I hate to put it this way, but the most vulnerable sector of our society is being left on to be run on its own. I get a little scared at stuff like that, and I'm very sorry. I know there's all kinds of other priorities for this government, the survival of the Quebecois language being one of them. But honestly, when I see stuff like this, my blood runs cold, and I really wonder, once again, I've said it on other subjects before, Aaron, but I really wonder whether this government, is going to be doing damage that can't be undone by the time we finally get rid of them.
Yeah, and by the way, if I read this right or heard this right when she spoke, this is a situation as bad as it is now. It seems to be getting worse, right? There's no kind of finger on in the dam here, and it's going to get better. It's not. It's gone from bad to worse and continues to go that way.
Well, no, but it's simply because, first of all, and the fundamental issue here is once again, the labor shortage, which last I heard has not been solved. It's still going on. We may not be talking about it as often as we used to. It's still there. So hence the ratio in terms of daycare workers per kids. But the other thing as well is like the money situation for the government. François Legault in the morning saying, "I've got no money for anybody." We have no room to maneuver. Every single penny, every single dime, every single nickel is spent. That's it. And then you read stuff like this and you go, okay, is anything going to get cut, or do we just go? Or are they just going to go with the status quo and whistle very loud and very long as they walk by that graveyard and hope nothing happens? Because I got a real bad feeling about stuff like this. And remember, Aaron, it's only thanks to Guylaine Leclerc, who's the Auditor General, that we know about this. Think of all the other stuff and all the other ministries that we are completely in the dark over.
You kind of wonder, though, Auditor General's reports, we have them federally, we have them here, governments will react in one day, and then it gets forgotten about, Jim. Does it not more often than not?
Well, I think for daycare, I think this is something, and once again, it's incumbent on the opposition parties to keep this alive and to keep it newsworthy and to keep it interesting. And they had a lot of interesting questions today, holding the government's feet to the fire. But honestly, I think maybe they may want to, all these parties, even the league leading Parti Québécois, might want to turn around and say, listen, this is people's kids. You can't get more important than that. Hammer away at that. The same way that PSPP, yesterday I was a little shocked, but he was talking about the whole law and order thing in Montreal. I think the PQ is figuring out that it's not all, theoreticals, political theoreticals. There are bread and butter issues that really appeal to the electorate. You don't have to be a populist to understand what's on people's minds. And I think if you're a parent, you have a kid, you're either waiting for a spot or you've got a kid in one of those spots, this to you is the single most important story in Quebec right now.
We shall see, if the opposition seizes on this or not. Jim, thank you.
Adamant.